Hi everyone, this is part 2 of the watercolour pencils, and everything is the same as in part 1, just a different technique using the watercolour pencils. Now, I haven't pre-made any of these ones. I like to be surprised, just like everybody else. Here are the details of what we're using, the watercolour pencils. This one in particular is Real Red. They're on page 126 of the annual catalogue, and the stamp set we're using is the Painted Poppies on page 24 of the annual catalogue. I've used the ink pads Crumb Cake and the Memento Tuxedo Black. The cardstock is the same as in part 1. We're using 3 kinds: basic white, shimmery white, and the fluid watercolour paper. These are the pages you'll find those on also in the annual catalogue. And today we're using the water painters. We will be using the blender pen in a future video, but we've also got just an ordinary everyday paintbrush as well, in case you don't have the water paintbrushes. I'll show you how to use both. So we'll just get started. Now, I have stamped this on the various cardstocks, and I've used the Crumb Cake initially, but we will be overstamping again with the Memento Tuxedo Black. So this is the basic white, the shimmery white, and the fluid watercolour paper. Now, some papers are meant to hold a lot of water. This watercolour paper is the bomb in that respect. The shimmery white is pretty good. The basic white, I'm telling you right now, you don't want to be scrubbing away at this. You just want to get that colour on there and just leave it to that. And I'll show you a few tricks along the way. So we'll start with the basic white this time. This is probably one I wouldn't use for this technique. You can, but the results are better on the other two. So the way we're going to use these pencils is I have a block here. It's just a clear block. I've also got a watercolour water painter brush, and these are filled with water. Don't know if you can see there's water in there. You push on the sides and the water comes out. Now, I've already mixed up some red, but I'm going to show you how to do that. So you just simply hold your pencil and take the colour from the point of the pencil. Now you can see that colour's intensifying. I've got some music on. It might be a bit loud. It's just a bit noisy around here at the moment. I'll just turn that down. It's a horrible day again in Sydney. It's raining and it's cold. And it's like towards the end of November, where we should be having warm weather, and it's quite cold. So this is what we're calling a loose watercolour technique. And by loose, I mean loose. I'll show you what I'm speaking of. So I've loaded this brush, okay? And I'm just going to basically do the outline there, go down to where I want it darker, and just drop some colour in there like that. If I start scrubbing at that, sorry, my last video I had the camera facing the wrong way and there were no close-ups, so I apologise for part 1 if you watched it. So you can see it there, it's quite wet. There's a bit of shine to it. Now, the secret is not to do the petal next to it. Okay, so miss one, do the next one. And I mean, I'm just basically dabbing that on. And you can put more paint down there, have it run down, so that it's more concentrated down there. Then I'm going to do the third one. Now, there's not a lot of shading in watercolour. This is why it's a very loose colouring technique. So now that I'll leave to dry, but I'm actually going to speed it up, and I'm going to do it off camera because this heat gun is quite loud. So I'll just do it away from the microphone for a second and show you the results. And you can see it doesn't take long. You can leave it to dry naturally if you want to. It is still wet. I can feel it's still wet on the back there. You can see a little bit of indentation, but it's dry enough to do the next step, and that is just to fill in the other petals. Okay. So with watercolour, you can build up your colour. I mean, this is just basically throwing that colour on there. And it doesn't matter if it goes outside the lines. Now what I'll do is I'll do all of them up to the same step. So that's the basic white. I'll leave that one there to dry. I'm going to need some more water. So a couple of drops of water on there. I hope you're seeing that. And just grab some pigment from the tip of the pencil. The good thing about these pencils is, like, if you decided you wanted to go camping or something, all you've really got to do is take these pencils and a water brush filled with water, and you don't have to worry about anything else. So here's the shimmery white. The shimmery white is a bit more forgiving than the basic white. So we'll just go in there like that. Do the second one. I'm just trying to hold it at an angle. Maybe you might be able to see it a bit better. Oh, I did the petal next to it. I didn't mean to. But it looks like it's actually drying fairly quickly, this one. So we'll go back to this one. Look, I mean, I'm just throwing that on there. It's not pretty. When it's finished, hopefully you'll see how easy this is. This has basically got to be one of the easiest ones. Okay, so that's the shimmery white done. So we'll pop that up there, unless you drop it in the paint. And this is the fluid. Another couple of drops. And as you can see, I'm just basically taking the colour from the tip of the pencil. Now this is what this paper is actually designed for, is watercolour. And you'll see you can develop your own techniques where you sort of just leave an extra dark bit down the bottom there if you want to. And you can build up the colour, as I said, as you go. Now this one takes a bit longer to dry, so I'm going to put that one aside. And I'm going to go into the basic white again, and I'm going to add a second layer of the colouring. And basically all I'm going to do is use the heel of the brush and just, well, actually I'll use the tip of the brush because I think this one's a bit easy because it runs straight down. And I'm just creating a darker area towards the bottom of the petals where the centre of the flower would be. And I can hear you now thinking, my God, what a bloody mess. But at the end of the day, when we stamp over that, and you can rinse these brushes, I always keep a little towel here, and you can kind of just, with a damp brush, not a wet brush, but with a damp brush, you can actually kind of lift that colour up if you don't want those demarcation lines. But, you know, those lines are there in watercolour. So already that's looking pretty good to me, and you might be thinking, oh, you're delusional. But just wait, this is a loose watercolour, and just wait till the end. That's all I can say. That's my only piece of advice. Wait till the end. So we're going to do it again with the shimmery white. Get a couple of little drops. And I think what I'll do is I'll use the ordinary paintbrush with the watercolour paper just to show you the difference between using them. We sell these watercolour water painters, they're called. I think they're on page 129, okay, according to my little note over there. So darker there, a bit darker in the middle there. This one's quite dark. I mean, if you're looking for a craft that's quick, easy, and you can end up with some really lovely things that you can use, I keep going over to that side now. This is easy. It is really quite easy. I mean, you can see what I'm doing. I'm only just dabbing it again. I wash it in just some clean water. This one's very discoloured. It's been used a long time. And you know what? I'm not even going to do that. I was going to smudge the lines, but I quite like that one. Okay, so we'll leave that one to dry now. And we'll put that aside and we'll just use an ordinary brush. This is an ordinary paintbrush. And you'll get to the point where you'll have to sharpen your pencil again because we're kind of actually melting the pigment from the pencil. If you can see that tip, it looks a bit weird. Okay. So this is just basically dropping colour in. I'm just dropping the colour in. I want it to be darker there, have a bit of texture to it. And I want to create a lighter shade for these other petals that we didn't cover before. So just add a bit more water to it over there. So the beauty of it is, like, you don't need special equipment. You've probably already got an acrylic block and your coloured pencils, your watercolour pencils, and either just an ordinary paintbrush or a water paintbrush, a water painter, and you're good to go. And you can pack this stuff up and it doesn't take up much room. So I think we'll let that one dry, and And now we'll do, rather than do the black, the grey, I'm going to do black for the centre of these, because the grey is so much lighter and I want it to sort of stand out just a little bit more. So we'll put some water down. Put some pink. You might see this better with the black. How quickly and easily it is to just create that wash of colour. Okay, so pop that one there. We'll do this one. Hope I'm in frame. Having issues with knowing where the camera is. I'm not sure if it's old age or just lack of technology. Okay, there's two. This one here, well, that one's still pretty wet. I might actually dry that with a heat gun. Just do it over here so it's not so noisy. And we'll use this one to create the dark red in the middle of the petals. And I'll just dry that again. Hope that's not too noisy. As you can see, you can see it evaporating. And then I'll just do the black. Now this is very loose indeed. Now the good part is this is your cleanup. Done. Done and done. Now I'm going to just make sure these are all dry before we stamp, because as I said, our memento is water-based and it will run if that paint is still wet. Now the paper curls up, so when it starts to curl up, if you just flip it over and heat it from the back, and it'll straighten out. I mean, it's not going to straighten out perfectly, but it's going to straighten out a little bit better than it was. Okay. Sorry about the noise. Okay, so we've got these blobby messes, basically. So I'm just giving that a bit of a bend, putting it back into shape, because we're going to be stamping over it now using the Stamparatus. And this is all the same stuff I used in part one. So everything is still set up exactly the same. So I've got my stamp on the door of the Stamparatus here. And I still have my template, which is just a piece of cardstock with this square shape having been cut out of it, so that I can pop that straight back in there. Now, they're pretty warpy. They're pretty warped. So I'm going to use a really strong magnet on this one. And if I've got any more, sorry. I've got loads of magnets, so that's in place. going to ink that up with the Memento Black. This is the shimmery white. Just move that magnet slightly. Okay. Just pressing down on that gently. Leave it for a second for the ink to actually get absorbed into the paper. Now the good thing about this Stamparatus is if that hadn't stamped perfectly, I can re-ink that and stamp it again, and it's going to be in exactly the same position. So there's our shimmery white one. I'm not sure what amount of shimmer you can see, but that is a loose watercolour, and trust me, that looks a whole lot better than it did before I overstamped it. Here's a comparison. Okay, so now I'll stamp this one, pop it in the same position. Put the magnets on it. Now when I glue this, if I was to use this for a card, I would make sure I had some really strong glue. These magnets are very strong. I would either use the wet glue, the Tombow glue, what we call the green glue, the Tombow Mono Multi-Liquid, and then place something heavy on it, or I would use the Stamp and Seal or the Stamp and Seal Plus. Okay, I've still got the old Stampin' Up Fast Fuse, but the new Stamp and Seal is better from all accounts. But I bought a whole pile when they were on their way out, and I've still got them, so I'm going to use those up. Okay, so I'm going to overstamp that again with the black Memento, and take a good look at that, because that looks like the dog actually painted it. And now I think it looks perfectly acceptable. You've got the variation in the colours, as watercolours tends to do, so it looks, I think it looks nice. There's two of them together, so you can compare the two. And now I'll do the watercolour one, the fluid watercolour paper. This is, as I said, it's quite a thick paper, so I don't know what the GSM is, to be honest. These magnets are so strong. Okay, so we're in place. Now, the fluid watercolour paper doesn't stamp especially wonderfully. You might have to do it a couple of times, so we'll just see how we go. Because of the texture of the paper, we might have to do it 1 or 2 times. We'll just see. Let's have a look. Well, that's actually stamped not too bad, but we might give it another go. Okay, so we'll give it another go. Just let that grab for a minute. Oh, I think that looks pretty good. Now I'll put them side by side for you to compare. So you've got the fluid watercolour paper, the basic white, and the shimmery. white cardstock. But again, depending on what sort of look you're going for, I mean, and going out of the lines is quite acceptable with this type of loose watercolouring. In fact, you know, if you wanted to, you could kind of really go out of the lines. You can also just put a wash of colour down, and I'll see if I've got a piece that I can show you with. You can just put a wash of colour down. This is the watercolour paper. Yep, that's the right side. And just put a wash of this water down. Pick up your pigment. I'm going to have to sharpen this shortly. Just like this. Now either allow that to dry naturally, or I'll do it with the heat gun again. Oh, no, I won't, because it won't work. So once that's down there like that, then you can overstamp with the shape of your with your stamp. And if you just bear with me for a couple of seconds, I'll see if I can get that working. I need a new heat gun, and I'm waiting to get the Stampin' Up one, because this one keeps cutting out because it's not much good. So I'll pause this for a second and then I'll press play again.